Oh God. Why?
I'm not sure how to say this. We just received the results, and we believe the subject may be afflicted with some mental trauma of some kind. But don't be alarmed. We have one of our best men on the job. We are sure he will get down to the bottom of this.
Today we're going to do a case study on a subject known as Raphtalia. After doing some research and digging, I think some of the things I've discovered about Raphtalia's condition may shed some light on some theories I've seen floating around the anime community about her. But before we dive into the mind of Raphtalia, I think you and I need to get to know her first. What we know so far is that Raphtalia is a young girl that comes from the race known as the Tanuki. This particular race has similar features of a raccoon, as we can see from the ears and tail. Raphtalia lost her family at a very young age due to the village where she lived being attacked by the waves. During one wave in particular, Raphtalia's parents sacrificed themselves in order to save their daughter, but they lost their lives in the process. Fast forward through years of struggle, hardship, and being sold into slavery, and in comes Naofumi, aka the Shield Hero, here to rescue our raccoon waifu from her hard life and treat her like the true princess she meant to. For some of you that have seen how Raphtalia is treated by Naofumi may have been just like me, doing a little bit of mental gymnastics, theorizing, and trying to decide if Raphtalia might be potentially suffering from some form of Stockholm Syndrome. Now, for those of you going, what in the world is Stockholm Syndrome, allow me to bring you up to speed. Stockholm Syndrome, according to Britannica Encyclopedia, is a psychological response wherein a captive begins to identify closely with his or her captors as well as with their agenda and demands. So that's it. That explains everything, right? Naofumi enslaved Raphtalia. Now Raphtalia, due to her rough past, psychological breakdown at a young age, is just experiencing a psychological phenomenon that makes her think she's in love with him and will basically do whatever he says. Case closed, video over, right? Wrong. See, there's a few problems with the Stockholm Syndrome theory in itself. According to my research, Stockholm Syndrome isn't even a real thing, kinda, sorta. See, psychologists and psychiatrists use a book called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, otherwise known as the DSM-5. And if you were to get a hold of this book or just Google it, you wouldn't find anything on Stockholm Syndrome at all. As of today, the medical and psychological community are at odds with each other, deciding on whether or not it's even a real thing. You see, currently there isn't enough data to support the existence of Stockholm Syndrome due to the fact that quote-unquote cases of Stockholm Syndrome are so rare. And not only that, there's another problem with Stockholm Syndrome. See, if you were to look into what exactly it is a syndrome, meaning that Stockholm Syndrome is a mixture of many other different things pushed into one word called Stockholm Syndrome. So what that does essentially is that it makes it hard for a psychologist, psychiatrist to diagnose somebody because they could have one thing or it could be another and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and they can't just bunch it all together and be like, yo, you got Stockholm Syndrome, because that wouldn't be an effective diagnosis. So that puts us in a difficult spot if we can't go the Stockholm Syndrome route, right? But don't give up hope, my friends. I've devoted hours into helping discover the secrets of our furry little waifu because I've cracked the case. You see, there is one thing that Stockholm Syndrome is very closely related to, and the answer lies with the main character of the show, Naofumi. What the heck, Black? Why is there PTSD flashing across the screen? What the hell does Raphtalia have to do with that? Don't worry, those of you scratching your heads again, I've got you covered. So PTSD, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, PTSD is a disorder that some people develop after experiencing a shocking, scary, or dangerous event. So Raphtalia, experiencing the death of her parents and loved ones, being sold into slavery not one but 2 times, and held in captivity twice, all these things can easily make someone feel stress of the traumatic kind.
Okay, Black, I hear what you're saying about the PTSD and Stockholm Syndrome, blah blah blah, but what does it have to do with Naofumi?
Well, since Raphtalia has PTSD and not Stockholm Syndrome, all fingers are pointed at Naofumi, but not for the cause of Raphtalia's PTSD, but Naofumi is actually the cure. PTSD, when you look at it from a basic standpoint, comes down to a few simple methods of diagnosis. 1. Re-experiencing symptom, 1 avoidance system, 2 arousal and reactivity symptoms, at least 2 cognition and mood symptoms. Diagrams above will show you what those mean, all that kind of stuff real quick. Alright, everybody's up to speed, kind of making sense, those brain juices flowing? Alright, great. As you can see, Raphtalia definitely checks all these boxes for our diagnosis. Now let's move on to how Naofumi is treating her PTSD. The way Naofumi is treating Raphtalia's PTSD can be explained very easily. It is through a process called flooding. Flooding is where you would take the subject experiencing the trauma and in some way, shape, or form flood their minds with the event that's causing them the stress in the first place. In some cases, the patient's mind is so exposed to the trauma that they eventually become desensitized to it, where the event no longer bothers them and their PTSD is cured. And sometimes the opposite effect happens, where the person is never able to recover from the trauma and the flooding of even more trauma, hence why only professional psychologists and psychiatrists should do this, not regular people. Now finally, Naofumi, whether he realizes it or not, Naofumi is actually flooding Raphtalia's mind with the imagery from her past that triggers her PTSD through fighting. See, every time she fights or fights against something that triggers her past events in her head, she becomes less and less sensitive to the traumatic events of her past. An example of this would be something similar to full-grown elephants that are born in captivity are able to be chained to trees by their legs and won't try to break the chains that bind them, even though they are strong enough to snap the chain into twigs. The reason for this is when the elephant was very young, the chains were placed on it the same way, and it could never break them because baby elephants typically aren't strong enough to break the chains. This creates a belief in the elephant that it will never be strong enough to break the chains that bind it even into adulthood. Raphtalia, on the other hand, represents that if we dig deep enough inside of ourselves, we can uncover inner strength we never knew we had and rid ourselves of any mental chains or shackles from our past if we put our minds to it. Raphtalia is becoming a stronger and better person, and I'm amazed that the creators of this show are putting this much love into a character who I've enjoyed watching grow and change for the better with each episode. But enough of all that, sappy crap, blah blah blah. Yo, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe while you're at it, and meet me in the comments below for random anime talk and discussion. Depending on how this video does, I might make this into a series where I dig deep into the minds of other Shield Hero characters or characters from completely different anime series. But until then, I'm Black Impact, and I'll see you guys in the next one.